Sunday. This is Sunday, January 4th, 2024. We have in front of us Black History Month. And this is the first Sunday in the month of February. And what I want to do is give to you in this message today and in subsequent messages, I want to give you the letter from the Birmingham jail by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., PhD, written in the year 1963. Give you a little background before I start reading from the letter. When Dr. Martin Luther King's life was taken away in April of 1968, I lived at 1900 T Street Northwest in Washington, D.C., directly across the street from the Washington Hilton Hotel where President Ronald Reagan was shot. I'll never forget the day that he died. What was I doing in Washington? A little Alabama boy doing in Washington? I'll tell you. I was swept into the nation's capital as a soldier in U.S. President Lyndon Baines Johnson's war on poverty. It was the Project 44 Job Corps program in which 22 young men, 22 young women, the brightest students in the Job Corps program, was sent to Washington, D.C. to get hands-on experience, first-hand experience in our federal government operations. I tell you what I was doing the day Dr. King was killed. I was operating an IBM 1401 computer, running payroll for employees in the U.S. Office of Economic Opportunity. And I was located at 7981 Fenton Street in Silver Spring, Maryland. And what we would do there at that location was process payroll cards and ship them to Cherry Hill, New Jersey for payroll checks to be printed. My friend, I saw the burning fires coming up from Washington, D.C. as I traveled down 16th Street on my way home. But I'll say this and get on into Dr. King's letter from a Birmingham jail. It was Dr. King's death that opened the doors of admission for me to enter the University of Maryland. Had not been for Dr. King's death, I never would have been ushered through those doors into the university. So as Dr. King said, all that I am, I owe. And I'm deeply indebted to the life and ministry of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Here's what prompted the letter from the Birmingham jail. A group of 8 white preachers in the year 1963 petitioned Dr. King and the Southern Christian Leadership Conference to cease protest march in Birmingham. Here's what Dr. King said to those 8 white preachers that petitioned him. He says, I must give the reasons for my being in Birmingham. since you have been influenced by the argument of outsiders coming in. Several months ago, our local office here in Birmingham of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, of which I am president, invited us to be on call to engage in a nonviolent direct action program if such were deemed necessary. We rapidly consented, and when the hour came, we lived up to our promises. Beyond this, I am in Birmingham because injustice is here. You deplore the demonstrations that are presently taking place in Birmingham, but I'm sorry that your statement did not express a similar concern for the conditions that brought the demonstrations into being. I would not hesitate to say that it is unfortunate that so-called demonstrations are taking place in Birmingham at this time rather. But I would say more emphatic that I would say that it is even more unfortunate that the white power structure in this city left the Negro community with no other alternatives. In any nonviolent campaign, there are 4 basic steps. Number 1, collection of the facts to determine whether injustices are alive. Number 2, negotiation. Number 3, self-purification. And number 4, direct action. Dr. King says, we have gone through these steps in Birmingham, and there can be no gainsaying of the fact that racial injustice engulfs this community. Birmingham is probably the most thoroughly segregated city in the United States. Its ugly record of police brutality is known in every section of the country. Its unjust treatment of Negroes in the courts is a notorious reality. There have been more unsolved bombings, there have been more unsolved bombings of Negro homes and churches in Birmingham than in any other city in this nation. These are hard, brutal facts and believable facts. On the basis of these conditions, Negro leaders sought to negotiate with the city fathers. But the political leaders consistently refused to engage in good faith negotiations. As in so many experiences of the past, we were confronted with blasted hopes, and the dark shadow of deep disappointment settled upon us. So we had no alternative except that of preparing for the direct action. No other alternative. Whereby we would present our very bodies as means of laying our case before the local and national conscience. You may well ask, why direct action? Why sit-ins, marches, and etc.? Isn't negotiation a better path? You are exactly right in your call for negotiations indeed. Indeed, this is the purpose of direct action. Nonviolent direct action seeking to create such a crisis and establish creative tension that a community has constantly refused to negotiate and is forced to confront the issue. It seeks to dramatize the issue that it can no longer be ignored. I just referred to the creation of tension as part of the work of the nonviolent resistor. This may sound rather shocking, but I confess that I am not afraid of the word tension. Not afraid of the word of tension. I have earnestly worked and preached against violent tension, but there is a type of constructive nonviolent tension that is necessary for growth. Just as Socrates felt that it was necessary to create tension in the minds so that individuals could rise from bondage of myths and half-truths to the unfettered realm of creative analysis and objective appraisal, we must see the need of having nonviolent gladifiers that to create a kind of tension in society that will help men to rise from the dark depths of prejudice and racism to the majestic heights of understanding and brotherhood. There go the king. But let me continue. We have not made a single gain in civil rights without determined legal and nonviolent pressure. History is long, and the tragic story of the fact that privileged groups seldom give up their privileges voluntarily. Individuals may see the moral light of individuals may see the moral light and voluntarily give up their unjust posture. But as Reinhold Niebuhr has reminded us, groups are more immoral, immoral, than individuals. We know through painful experience that freedom is never voluntarily given by the oppressor. It must be demanded by the oppressed. For years now, I have heard the word wait. It rings in the ear of every Negro with piercing familiarity. This wait has almost always meant never. The nations of Asia and Africa are moving with jet-like speed toward the goal of political independence, and we still creep at horse and buggy pace toward the gaining of a cup of coffee at a lunch counter. I guess it's easy for those who have never felt the sting darts of segregation to say, wait. But when you have seen vicious mobs lynch your mothers and fathers and at will and drown your sisters and brothers at whim, when you have seen hate-filled policemen curse, kick, brutalize, and even kill black brothers and sisters with impunity, when you see the vast majority of 20 million Negro brothers smothering in the airtight cage of poverty in the midst of an affluent society, when you suddenly find your tongue twisted and your speech stammering as you seek to explain to your 6-year-old daughter why she can't go to the public amusement park that is just being advertised on television, and see the tears welling up in her little eyes when she is told that Funtown is closed to colored children, and see the depressing clouds of inferiority to form in her little mental sky, and see her being distort her little personality by unconsciously developing bitterness toward white people. When you have to concoct an answer for a 5-year-old son asking in agonizing pathos, "Daddy, why do white people treat colored people so mean?" When you take a cross-country drive to find it necessary to sleep night after night in the uncomfortable corners of your automobile because no hotel will accept you, when you are humiliated day in and day out by nagging signs reading "white men" and "colored," when your first name becomes nigger and your middle name becomes boy, however old you are, and your last name becomes John, and when your wife and mother are never given the respectable title Mrs., when you are harried by day and night, haunted by night by the fact that you are a Negro, living constantly at tiptoe stance, never quite knowing what to expect next, and plagued with inner fears and outer resentments. When you are forever fighting a degenerating sense of nobodiness, then, my 8 white preachers, you will understand why we find it difficult to wait. I added the 8 white preachers. It's not in the script. There comes a time when the cup of endurance runs over, and men are no longer willing to be plunged into an abyss of injustice where they experience the bleakness of corroding despair. I hope you can understand our legitimate and unavoidable impatience. You express a great deal of anxiety over our willingness to break laws. This is certainly a legitimate concern, since we so diligently urge people to obey the Supreme Court decision of 1954 outlawing segregation in public schools. It is rather strange and paradoxical to find us unconsciously breaking laws. One may well ask, how can you advocate breaking some laws and obeying other laws? The answer is found in the fact that there are 2 types of laws. I'm going to have to wrap this thing up. We got 19 minutes gone already. I'll pick up the rest in subsequent messages in the Black History Month series. But Dr. King says the answer is found in the fact that there are 2 types of laws. There are just laws and there are unjust laws. I'm going to stop right there because I have studied substantive and procedural law as a Thurgood Marshall Clio fellow at the Howard University School of Law. And I know something about just laws and unjust laws. So, my friend, if this message has touched your heart, if you feel like God has spoken to you in this message, you may properly and appropriately respond in these words. Dear God, I know that I'm a sinner, and I believe that Jesus died on the cross to forgive me of my sins. I'm sorry for all the wrongs that I have done, and I ask you to forgive me. I thank you for your love, and I thank you for the new life that I will enjoy in Jesus Christ. From this day forward, I choose to follow you in Jesus' name. Now, my friends, unto him who's able to keep us from falling and present us faultless before the presence of his glory with exceeding great joy. Now unto him, the only wise God, to whom be glory, majesty, dominion, and power, both now, henceforth, and forevermore. God bless you and keep you till we meet again. May God bless the tie that binds our hearts, Christian love. May God rest the soul of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in the portals of glory as we prepare to move forward in consideration of the letter from the Birmingham jail on next week. Goodbye.